We are officially in the college football offseason. Every SEC coach back? Nobody fired? We'll discuss. The SEC Squad starts right now.
We're talking ball with the SEC Squad, sponsored by Game Time. From Alabama to Tennessee, from Georgia to Oklahoma, from Auburn to Texas, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming SEC weekend. It's the SEC Squad, and we have a seat for you. Hurt feelings and thin skin are prohibited. Squad up. You're part of the SEC Squad.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into the SEC Squad. Sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we discuss another week of the college football offseason in the SEC. And let's welcome in our squad as we've got Brandon Olsen, host of Locked On Gators, Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss, Clint with our host of a Locked On Bulldogs podcast, Luke Robinson, host of Locked On Bama, Corey Burton, Locked On Vandy, John Williams, and Jay Smith from Locked On Sooners, and John Miller, host of Locked On Mizzou. Chris Gordy here, host of Locked On SEC. And guys, wanted to start here real simple. We'll kind of open it up to the panel, but I don't think we're making a big enough deal that the fact that the SEC brings back every head coach this year, I think speaks volumes about this whole thing of the SEC's dying and all this, yet not one coach was fired. I think it's very unique. This can't remember the last time it's happened. And we're not even talking 14, we're talking 16 teams. How shocked are you that we bring back every coach in the conference?
Yeah, I mean, as the guy with Billy Napier as his head coach, I can say I was shocked that he joined that group of head coaches coming back. Definitely thought he'd be gone after those first 3 weeks were just, I almost put a bag on my head dealing with it. If you watch any of the crossovers after that point, I'm just like, yeah, we're going to get crushed until things happen. I decided I wasn't going to any more games because I didn't want to watch an interim coach. I am stunned that everybody came back. Honestly, everybody I think here got the ESPN notification. Mm-hmm. Florida's boosters put together the $26 million buyout, and then nothing happened. It's crazy. It's ridiculous to see. Florida administration, I'm fine with you bringing Billy back, but just know you're still spineless losers in my eyes.
Oh, coaches not getting fired, that's okay. But I thought like Sam Pittman would walk away. That was my kind of pick to leave. I thought there was going to be a chance. And maybe Mark Stoops because of that weird Texas A&M flirtation and going back up to Kentucky. But I guess Ole Miss kind of saved his job last year. So it was weird. I'm glad that everybody's coming back and we just kind of have a status quo. But you're right, Gordy. It's kind of hard to say the SEC is dead whenever no change is happening.
It does feel like at the beginning of this year, the hot seat level is sky high for a bunch of schools and a couple coaches that I think would be poached to the NFL. So last year, it seemed like Pittman, but maybe Napier were on the hottest of hot seats. But this year, coming into it, I feel like there are four guys primely sitting on burning coals. And then I think Lane is the one who might get a little tempted, a little poached by the NFL, something like that. So this time next year, we will not be having the same conversation.
Yeah, I think
agree
somebody
with
will be gone. Hey, all you have to do is look at Ohio State. I mean, they just ran roughshod over the entire college football playoff, and it comes out today they ran at a $38 million deficit. I don't know if anybody can afford to fire anybody anymore.
No, you can't.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
timing is everything in life, and I think this season just the timing was off for a lot of those different candidates to possibly be fired. And, I think to Luke's point, would you rather spend that money, tens of millions of dollars, on a buyout or on NIL? don't get me wrong, I think Texas A&M, for example, is happy with Mike Elko, but my goodness, that Jimbo buyout, those funds could have been allocated a little bit better.
You can thank Jimmy Sexton for all that, by the way he negotiates contracts. Oh, yeah, if you fire them at any point, they're already 85% of their remaining contract value has become kind of the status quo, and every school is just like, well, can't do that one. So Thank Jimmy Sexton for that one.
That man's elite. It's probably he's the number one agent in sports, period. I don't care about any other sport. This dude always finds a way to strong arm one school for somebody else. I mean, heck, Mike Norvell got a massive extension and goes 2 and like 10. And it's all because he called the school and said, hey, you guys want to talk to Mike? Then picked up the phone and said, hey, Florida State, I got somebody on the hook for Mike. If you want to keep him, it's going to cost you. I need that dude to sign a napkin and hand it to me. Maybe I'll get good luck like him. I'll get that kind of luck to be able to do anything in life. That's amazing.
What's crazy is all the guys that were on the hot seat going into the year, Napier, maybe Clark Lee, they saved their jobs with big wins, big seasons. Brent Venables, I think halfway through the season, his seat got really, really hot and then got the Alabama win. And it kind of allayed some of everybody's fears. But yeah, going into next year, man, the seats are going to be burning hot for a lot of guys.
I'm talking first 3 games. We're just going to see cuts if things don't turn around for a couple of universities. Yeah. I don't know how Hugh Freeze doesn't understand that he is one bad half away from not coming back out for the remainder of the game.
Yeah, that was
Auburn would do that to him.
Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, Auburn would do that to him. But yeah, Clark Lee, the reason why he's coach of the year, biggest turnaround of should have been fired, was getting fired, and somehow got some reprieve, turn around, win 7 games. It's a hell of a turnaround. But coming into the season, they're going to – Sam Pittman's going to get the retired, fired type thing. Hey, you should retire. Go ahead. And, Venables, if things don't change quickly, that I wouldn't be surprised on that one.
John Calipari might get that too, the way things are going.
Back to the point about agents and coaches, it's going to be interesting to see if teams start, especially with revenue sharing and everything. And I mean, who the heck knows how all the dollars are really going to work and how everything's going to be funneled to where. But if some of the athletic directors start saying, hey, look, we're going to pay our coach a little less because we got to pay our players a lot more. Yep. Sort of like the NFL, where, it'd be great if there were another Nick Saban, if I can go find the Kirby Smart, if I can go find, dare I say a Ryan Day, but something like that. And that would be fantastic. But I'm probably better off finding somebody who's a pretty good coach that can recruit, pretty well enough, and I can give him a big budget, and then he can recruit even better.
Well, that's the thing I always throw out to people, guys, is when I hear, we want to fire this guy or fire this coach, I go, well, who do you want? Who's better? And that's where you really get into when the Nick Saban, the legend, is retired, and a lot of these other coaches have moved on, like, who is elite now? You know what I mean? Like Ryan Day, you would ask me a month and a half ago, I'd have said, hell no, he's not elite. Now he's elite because he's got a national championship.
But Ed Orgeron has a national championship.
Is he still elite?
Ed Orgeron does have one. So that's a very fair point.
Does Ryan Day have to be elite, though?
Larry Coker had one.
I was going to say Barry Coker, yeah.
Well, but
Frank
he's also
Solich get one. He was close.
Les Miles.
One question I have.
Day's winning 10, 11 games a year is the other part of it. But let me throw it out to you. Go around the horn. Give me a name in the SEC that will not be back in 2026.
Sam Pittman. That one's easy.
Brian Kelly.
Mark Stoops.
I'm sorry, you said Brian Kelly?
Kelly.
Throw up an 8-4 next season and watch out.
Huge buyout.
That's the thing. It's the buyout
matter.
With Brian Kelly. I'd love to see him gone just from a humor perspective, but I got to say, if I'm cutting budget, if I'm an athletic director, if I'm in charge of one of these big schools, as a Missouri fan, I don't want to see them cut on coaches. Frankly, Missouri's going to do a $250 million improvement on their stadium. Hey, cool. To be honest, I'd rather have some players. I think that's where you're going to see the big cuts moving forward. All these big, shiny practice facilities and weight rooms and all that. That's done. Just pay me. I don't need all that for my recruiting visit if I'm a high schooler anymore. Just show me the money.
And it's funny you say that because I was talking to somebody that does fundraising at schools, and that's actually one of the big internal battles as of late. The fundraising department to do these facilities and do these buildings with people's names on it are now battling with the athletic department for NIL. So it's kind of fascinating to see where this is going to end up in the next couple of years. But because of rev share, honestly, I expect this administration, as they come in and get themselves settled, they're going to find a way to get rid of collectives and make collectives not be able to be that just beautiful arm where they can just throw money at them. They're going to force people to actually have name, image, and likeness deals that are tied to actual name, image, and likeness activities. I don't think collectives are going to be something that's going to last long term.
That'll be the federal government. They're going to get involved here with Ted Cruz and those kind of people. They're going to enact the legislation that says collectives can't operate if you're doing the revenue share.
Let me
exactly
say, my
right.
guy for getting fired next year, and unfortunately for two of our hosts, I'm going to say is Brent Venables, because honestly, the only thing he can hang his hat on this year really is beating an Alabama team that disappointed. I hate to say it. And I'm looking at the schedule for next year. They welcome in a Michigan team that's going to be much improved. They play an Auburn team that's just going to be as desperate as they are and probably has more talent. Texas didn't go anywhere. They're at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Bama, LSU, Missouri. I mean, I hate to say it, but you could almost see a losing record on there. And if that were to happen, Venables is gone.
No,
We'll
it's
take
not going to happen. They're
Yeah.
better than what they were this year. And listen, if you go look at all the guys that they had injured, I mean, you've heard it. If you watch any Oklahoma game, top 6 wide receivers, half of their offensive line, the 2 deep of the offensive line was gone for most of the year. And I mean, they played Ole Miss really close. They played Missouri really close until they kind of gave it away at the end. They were just a few things happening positively from a health perspective from being an 8-win team. And listen, I will drink the Kool-Aid, but I feel like this is reasonable. They were not too far off from being an 8-win team. If you look at this reasonably,
past tense, you're talking like you already gotten that Venables Kool-Aid right there.
So on that part of it, though,
I'll drink it. I'm gonna.
The biggest problem.
They're fixing the offense. Jackson Arnold's at Auburn. So
There
I'm
you
not
go.
Concerned about that.
You
game.
almost lost to Auburn, Houston, and Tulane was pretty close too. So you were a few plays from being non-bowl eligible.
Exactly, but with half of your offense basically missing for much of the season. So listen, I get everybody's gonna be down on Brent Venables. I've been arguing with Sooner fans all day on social media about them being down on Brent Venables.
He does a lot.
I'd
But
say
the
Jay
one
pointed
thing
to the
I
wrong
will
side.
say,
Not a great
let's be real
indicator.
about it.
That
This
that
is gonna be a
quarterback
much
transfer
better team
coming
than
in.
what they were in 2024.
Did
And
you guys
he's going to
change
work
strength
himself
and conditioning?
off the hot seat, much like Napier did, much like Shane Beamer did, much like Clark Lee did. No, I'm not here for it.
Well,
you know what?
okay,
The one
okay.
thing that is changing is that transfer quarterback in. I think Mater's got something going
Yeah,
on.
John
Tier?
Tier,
Yeah.
he's got it, man.
I think he is the real deal down there. And if he can get a system, if that OC, if wide receivers come back healthy, because the defense wasn't the main problem for all y'all. I don't think Venables is as hot. I truly think this is going to be the 4 coaches. I mean, I know I'm not calling Alabama to do a swap, but you're telling me there's another down year where it keeps going down from Saban, that somebody's not going to stir something up and talk about it. Okay, Lane could go to the NFL. I think Hugh Freeze is gone. He is on borrowed time. He is done as done can be.
Yeah.
Those are the early ones, very, very early and often. And Napier, if DJ Lagway gets hurt or doesn't progress at all, he's already said, I mean, they've said, hey, we're going to get rid of you too. There's a lot of shakeup. And so my bet for the first one out is Hugh, just because it's chalk. That's the easy choice.
That truly
care
is.
enough? Does Kentucky care enough for Mark Stoops? Like, is he first one gone? Because they're going downhill in a hurry.
That's what I've asked. I asked the exact same question. Kentucky's the one that makes me
The one
have
to watch
questions.
there, Kirk Ferentz retires at Iowa. They'll flip it into he got a better job at Iowa. See ya, Mark Stoops. We don't have
I can totally see him doing that too. Going back home. He's going back home to coach his old spot.
They have the same offensive philosophy.
Got it.
But to me, I think Hugh Freeze is probably, just as Clint said, that's probably the chalk one, the easiest one to knock off. Because in the thing with Auburn has been, it's always the bonehead decisions they make at the end of games that cost them games. Like, seriously, you were right. Oklahoma could have lost that Auburn game, but guess what? Thank you, Hugh Freeze, because you made the decision not to run the ball with a running back that was averaging over 5 yards per carry. You decided to go to a 5-wide set and let a quarterback who we all know made questionable decisions make a decision for you. Why would you do that? But this is a tradition as old as the game itself when it comes to Hugh Freeze. So he is number one on my list as far as somebody get fired. But real quick, that Brian Kelly one, that's not too far-fetched.
Man.
It's kind of fascinating to think about. Now, I don't think that LSU would fire him because I don't think he's going to have a scandal to get himself fired like Les Miles did, as well as Ed Orgeron, who, quite frankly, I saw him in Las Vegas, and the young lady he was with was definitely not somebody that he was married. She was younger than me. And so it was very interesting to see that after he got fired. But that man was the governor and decided to have people at practices and letting women call plays. He just wanted the power. I don't think it's far-fetched to think that Brian Kelly could be, but it has to involve a scandal. And the question is there a scandal around him right now?
We need to break, but Brandon, real quick.
like Jay was saying, like, oh, the reason Auburn lost games is because these decisions. The reason Auburn lost games is because Hugh Freeze sucks.
Okay.
That's the only way.
Fair.
Hugh Freeze sucks.
Hey,
And I know who my team is. I know who my coach is. Hugh Freeze sucks.
Is a fake Southern accent scandalous enough? I think it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially in Louisiana.
Get him out of here.
Got the #1 portal class, so if LSU wins, makes the playoff, he'll be just fine. All right, speaking of that, when we return, ESPN predicted the 2025 college football playoff bracket. We'll discuss that next. Back to the squad show in just a second, but I want to remind you guys, attending NFL playoff games, it's an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans is unmatched, and you'll never forget the thrill of seeing your favorite team clinch a playoff win live. It is a memory you'll never forget. And this year, Game Time, making it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature on the Game Time app. It is called Game Time Picks. It's going to filter out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you can focus on what matters, being there at the game. I used Game Time Picks to grab tickets a couple times throughout this season, and it could not be easier. You can find a super deal for incredible value on amazing seats, and you can even preview the view from your seat before buying. The all-in pricing also is a game changer. No surprise fees at checkout. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download Game Time today, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. SEC squad rolling along here. And, guys, before the break, we were talking about coaches on the hot seat potentially in the SEC. And Bill Connolly over at ESPN took Mark Schlabach's way too early top 25 and kind of played it out and said, all right, well, here's what our projected playoff bracket could look like following the 2025 college football season. And here is how they have the matchups shaken out. They have Ohio State as the 1. They have Texas as the 2, Clemson as the 3, and BYU as the 4. First off, Texas just going to repeat and be back as a top 4 seed is a little shocking. But they have LSU at Oregon. They have Boise State at Penn State, Iowa State at Notre Dame, and South Carolina at Georgia is the first round game. So that is Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, and LSU, all from the SEC. Does the SEC get 4 teams next year?
Do they realize Ashton Genty's going to the NFL? Is that?
I don't think they realize that part. That's one. Two, it's fascinating that I understood the Texas hype this season. They brought back the majority of the offensive line and a starting quarterback that's been in the system for like 3 years. That 100% makes sense because that's what you need for a coach like Steve Sarkisian to do what he does best. They lost a whole bunch of linemen, and Arch Manning will be taking over. Granted, he's been in the system, 2 years? So he'll be prepared. I don't think Arch is going to be a problem. The question is on that offensive line. They didn't bring in a big class this past, recruiting class, and there were questions as soon as those injuries that happened. Those dudes were kind of like, having problems with blocking. So I guess we can see if the line is going to be better as people move up the 2 deep. But they also play Ohio State, second week of the season? Just like we play Michigan? First week. There you go. First week. They open
Michigan the second. Yeah, they play
They open Ohio State. We play Michigan at the crib, and they're on the road. So that's going to be even more interesting to see how that goes. Their defense, they've got a lot of people that they're refreshing on, but the good thing is Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill are still there, so they should be solid in that capacity. But yeah, that just feels a little bit far-fetched right now, especially after what we saw with Texas in the bowl game.
Here's what's wild to me about that. Season win totals came out. Georgia, Texas, 10.5 with the season win totals tied up there. Ole Miss with 9, Alabama 9, LSU 8.5, South Carolina 6.5.
Playoff team.
I don't get if you're calling a playoff team, which by the way, Sellers might be the best quarterback in the SEC. I'm not gonna fight anybody on that. He might be. He's proven himself to be very, very worthwhile in it. He's in the conversation. He's young. He's getting another year in it. Shane Beamer just got that extension. There's talented guys coming back. South Carolina has dudes on the trenches. Like, I know we want to just talk about Sellers. They got dude on the trenches. Texas, Arch Manning is the reason why Texas is in that discussion so high up. Which
No, his last name, not the quarterback itself.
I don't blame that for being the case with the hype. But if I'm looking at those 4 teams, Texas is the most likely to drop off significantly because of all the loss of that. I know Wisner was great. I know they get some guys healthy and back. But man, that's huge to try to run the gauntlet again. Easier schedule this year because everything just flips and home and away. That's the only thing that really matters. But my gosh, that I would not put money on that. I would put money on the over of South Carolina. And if you gave me odds on that and juice, South Carolina is my pick of those 4 to make it because I'm getting big odds on coming back. And they're very talented. And they got a quarterback who knows what he's doing.
Texas has South
Carolina early because they play Virginia Tech and then they play South Carolina State. But then they welcome in Vandy and they're at Missouri. Those are 2 monster games for them. And that Vanderbilt game is always a game that's I don't know what their series record is. It just seems like
they've won the last 16 in a row.
And then at Missouri is huge too. And what if, again, it's not crazy to think that South Carolina comes out the gate 2-2, and all of a sudden all those dreams of the playoffs start to dissipate, and you wonder how everything will be handled because right now they are like that. That's sort of America's darling team right now. They seem to be in everybody's playoff picture.
Hey, and the Texas is the team that has the chance to be ranked in the top 5 and end up outside the top 25 at the end of the year because they're at Ohio State. They play at Georgia. They have to go to the Swamp, and believe me, Florida will be up for that game. And then they don't.
You know all about that one, Willis.
Yeah, they do not. They do not traditionally beat Oklahoma back to back. They just don't. And I'm not going to bet that they will this year.
And they got Florida on the road to Swamp, and then us in Red River. My God, that's going to be a gauntlet of a.
You guys are irrelevant in that one. Don't worry about it, Jay.
That is Kelvin Banks, Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, and Cameron Williams all leave 4 your starting 5 offensive linemen out in Texas.
And I could tell you, as somebody who's losing offensive linemen, we got them buckets out. We call them buckets because it's vomit worthy of what happens in that case, and especially what Texas did. Texas ran the ball well. Quinn Ewers, I don't know what he was thinking, what his draft evaluation is, but like, good luck to you, young man. I don't know who's going to take you with that. But Texas really did well off tackle with the motion and the running game with that. You saw the 2 teams in the national championship have incredible running games. What I'm saying, and I say this every single year, and I know Alabama doesn't have Saban. Why are they not in this conversation? I know Milroe, they got to figure out the quarterback situation, but they got the trenches and they got run in the SEC. That's what matters.
It's all about running.
National football is the same way. You got Saquon. The running teams just were in the national championship game. Like, that is what matters, and I think they can be there. I don't know why Alabama's not getting more love on that.
And to add to that, Texas was good at running the ball after they went down to their 4th string running back, which is even more amazing. That's the one thing I give them props for. They lost 3 running backs all season-ending injuries, and you're like, how?
Yeah.
How?
Between the 20s,
they have the easiest schedule in the SEC.
Well, there you go. And Florida's going to be good next year. I don't care nobody. Hey, Lagway is one of my dark horses for the Heisman. I'm going to put that out there right now. Florida's going to be fun to watch this season.
Texas lost.
I don't think he'll be a dark horse for the Heisman. I'll say that. Nothing against Lagway, but I'm going to be honest with you. That's how I feel. I think he needs to take some pretty big developmental steps as a quarterback. I will say that. As for the Ohio State, Notre Dame running teams making it in, I think the more important part of that for me is that they were 2 of the top 3 defenses in the country going into that. Like, I think the defense is significantly more important than just being the running team. Like, I think Notre Dame, I think they wanted to throw the ball more. I just don't think they were well equipped to do so. I think that having the fantastic defense that they had is more important than anything else as far as who made it further in the college football playoff.
All right, so Texas, first of all, had a pretty easy schedule, as well documented last year. The best teams they played beat them, Georgia and Texas, and Georgia beat them twice. And the other thing about the running, it is impressive that their 3rd, 4th string running back can do this or that. But if you've got a coach who's going to call a wide running play on 2nd and goal from the 1 with the national championship on the line, what does it matter? And then I go back to South Carolina for just a second because I just noticed this. I talked about them possibly starting out 2-2. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying it's not out of the realm of possibility. But then you look at after that. Listen to this 4-game stretch from October 11th to November 1st. At LSU, Oklahoma at home, Bama at home, at Ole Miss. I mean, I know they're the darling right now. I know they got Lenore Sellers coming back. They've got some pass rushers. They got some dudes. They really do. They got Nick Harbor, who is just an absolute Adonis. But boy, that is a tough stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. And then don't forget, Clemson as well. Like we're talking about playoff chances, not just SEC, but then they finish the season against, and that'll be a tough one for them. But my gosh, I don't think 4 teams from the SEC make it. I think 3 maybe get in, but I can't see a situation in which 4 get in.
So real quick, raise your hand. Do you have Texas in the playoff next year? Raise your hand.
No,
Nobody. None of you. Okay. Okay. One, maybe.
They've lost too much.
Raise your hand if you
9-3 is not going to get them in.
No.
Raise your hand if you think Georgia is in next year.
I think Georgia's in.
Okay, good bit of the group. Majority, okay, almost everybody. And then the other 2 they have in here. Raise your hand if you think LSU is in there. You got 1. Okay, raise your hand if you think South Carolina is.
Conversation in.
I think
Nobody.
they got a chance.
Can I get a Florida question just so I can see no one raise their hand for it?
Wow, does anybody think Florida makes the playoff? Nobody.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Anybody for Vandy?
Here's the thing that
would like
stands
to
out about
offer that one.
LSU
Not that
and the
one.
national championship game. It's the 2 guys that were playing quarterback in the national championship game, veteran quarterbacks. What's LSU got coming back? A veteran quarterback.
Veteran quarterback.
And that's going to
Fair.
matter. I mean, you look at the turnover amongst the rest of the SEC teams, and there's a lot of turnover at quarterback. And I think that's going to matter more than, listen, the defense
But
is going to
Ohio
matter.
State was more
The run
talented.
games are going to matter, but you got to have dudes that play big in big moments. And
Ohio State.
Listen, Oklahoma nearly took out Garrett Nussmeier. I thought he was done for the year. He came back and played balls out. Like he was phenomenal
against Florida.
coming back from injury. So I think he's going to propel that into a really good year in 2020.
Ohio State's got one of the most talented teams we've seen. It's up there with some of the most talented teams we see. I say that. And then Notre Dame does not have a very difficult schedule. And Riley Leonard, good player, love him, from the state of Alabama. I think he's a fantastic kid. All those things are great, but he's throwing for about 90 yards a game. So again, and I agree with the experience thing. That's why I think Auburn basketball is doing so well this year. They got so much experience. I think that's a huge positive. But at the same time, I think if you had given Notre Dame one of these other paths in the playoffs, I don't think they make it to the national championship.
My 3 choices of those 3 teams for the SEC: Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama make the playoff next year from the SEC.
Well, hold that thought.
About the only one I feel great about is Georgia.
When we return, we will throw out there the Crimson Tide. SEC squad continuing on, guys. Continuing our conversation, talking about the projected 2025 college football playoff bracket, and we did a round of polling here, and overwhelmingly everybody agreed Georgia's in. But what? I think we got 1 hand for Texas. Everybody thinks a drop off there. We got 1 hand for LSU. Nobody's really buying them. I think we got 1 hand for South Carolina. So who is going to be that team? And the one team we've neglected to discuss is 9-4 DeBoer. Does Alabama take that step back to where they are typically at?
I think they figure out Luke can tell us better, but I think they figure out the quarterback position, and DeBoer gets more of what he's looking for, like a distributor at that position versus what Milroe was. It was just a square peg, round hole type situation.
What shirt is he wearing?
We started off the podcast season talking about how it wasn't necessarily Kalen DeBoer not being a good hire, but rather the system that he wanted to bring in and the quarterback Miller didn't seem to connect that well. Get a quarterback that he can go have an entire calendar year with to get what he wants. And I think he's a good enough coach to get him back to excellence. That's my take on it.
I would just like to ask why I understand what you're saying, Clint and Corey, about the quarterback for just Kalen DeBoer's system, but could he not have done what we very realistically know happens of, hey kid, go hit the portal. I'm going to go get my guy, and then go get your guy. He still made the decision to play.
It was a sticky wicket. It wasn't that easy. I don't think it was that easy at all. No. In this particular case, Saban leaves. Milroe decides to come back. Some other folks in the locker room really liked that. I think DeBoer was really walking a tightrope. I think he was held a little bit hostage by the fact that, hey, not only has Milroe been a Bama guy through and through, and not only did, he decommitted from Texas, came to Alabama, stuck it out, waited his turn, all these things. At the same time, he also showed out, had really nice game against Wisconsin. Then he showed out against Georgia, and we're like, this guy's going to win the Heisman. Yeah. And then just the next week against Vandy, you give up a long drive, and the next thing you know, it's a pick six, and it's 14-0. You're like, what's wrong? Well, the offense didn't really have a bad day necessarily then, but then it starts deteriorating a little bit, and then by the time you get to Oklahoma, it's too late. I mean, it's like realizing you have the flu when you're 4 days into it. You should have been taking some of that NyQuil a little earlier.
Luke, my opinion on Alabama is I think that next year could be an 8-4 type year for Alabama, but the year after they're going to be absolute hell. It's going to be Keelan Russell, and he is going to be a dude. That's what I think. I think that is the future for Alabama.
Well, I mean, you got a whole year. Let him and Ty battle out. Why not Keelan now? I mean, why not?
It could be.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I mean. He's probably going to play as a true freshman because he's a quarterback that can do the Michael Penix stuff that Kalen DeBoer wanted to have happen this year.
Yep, that's my biggest thing. If you look at what Kalen DeBoer has done, Milroe is not, and the scrambling quarterback nonsense from before. Every quarterback is athletic now. You cannot have a non-athletic quarterback in college football. It's ludicrous to talk about dual threat anymore. You have to be able to move the pocket. You have to be able to rush a little bit. Penix was not exceptional at rushing. He was exceptional at moving the pocket and then picking his spots. And if that's what can happen at Alabama, I think they got all the rest of the pieces. That treasure trove, you look at all the roster development, that huge ratings everywhere across the board. And I think you're right, Luke. When you lose a co-defensive coordinator, when you lose all these people, he had to keep some nostalgia in there. He had to. He kept Saban's office in the stadium. You can't all of a sudden just remove the whole entire face from what it was. And I think he did an admirable job, truth be told, with what he had. Now, this is a case in which I typically say when coaches say, let me wait until my guys, I write that off. I'm like, whatever, do what you need to do right now. I think in this case, it's a little different. I do truly think Kalen has a step up this year in productivity, and we have a better product on the field. I don't think you see those Oklahoma games from Alabama this year.
Watch that opener at Florida State, though. They have added a lot in the portal. Florida State, I mean, it is going to be better.
They're going to suck again. Don't worry.
Gordy, come on.
They did have more inches of snow in the stadium last week than they had wins last year, by the way.
Look,
3-2.
Guys, I'm just saying, you're trying to sell me. He lost to 6-6 Vandy and 6-6 Oklahoma. Right. Now those teams would have been bowl eligible.
Those are SEC rules.
I agree. I can't defend that. But I can also say I feel okay about going to. Yeah, it's going to be a little scary, and everybody's going to be going crazy and all those things. In the end, I feel like it is going to be a little better. I also recognize I'm a diehard Bama.
If Florida State were to beat Alabama, there would be a brick going through a window.
No. It'd be a window going through a brick. It would be 5.
Don't worry about it. You're safe there. Don't worry about that one.
Technically, that's a tough road environment. I know last year is on top of mine, but before that, Florida State was pretty damn good, right? I mean, they were undefeated the year prior, so maybe.
Easy on the undefeated.
No, they didn't.
Undefeated regular season. There you go.
They can give out as many rings that say unconquered as they want.
They're fourth straight. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. So why don't we get Tennessee on here? Bring out the coffee table book about the national championship banner that wasn't there. Let's put one out for Florida State as well.
Scared.
They should have had one ring that said undefeated, and one ring that said knocked unconscious for the bowl game.
Mm-hmm. Well, one more before we wrap it up, guys. Is there another team we haven't mentioned? Steven, Ole Miss. I know you think you believe the Austin Simmons hype. You think they can get there?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, Ole Miss is going to be fun. Ole Miss right now, if you look at their roster and look at it's like 9 wins, is about right on the over/under. Ole Miss needs to find one more. That's going to be the problem for Ole Miss. And I think and Lane Kiffin needs to drop this analytics crap, because it cost him 3 games last year.
You sound like such a boomer.
That's fine, because they played 100 years of football, and boomers
we call that
analytics are the problem.
We call that wisdom. You'll learn it as you continue to grow. Yeah. We call that collective intellect from age.
He didn't do it against Georgia and beat the brakes off of them.
That's exactly right. Lane Kiffin, that game, I had so much respect. He just grew up before my eyes as a head coach against Georgia, and I tipped my cap and I said, that's a dude. And then he just lost sight of it. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, you know what I don't need anymore? ESPN in the bottom corner. The book says go for it. Like, no, my brain says kick the field goal. Let's take the points.
Okay, hold on.
Go.
That's the thing that I think so many people get wrong. The proper way to address analytics is what the book says and what my gut says.
Right.
And you got to pick it. It's not simply just go by the book. It's not as simple as that, but I do think that there's a little more nuance to it than just being one or the other. But I also don't think going, just get that analytics crap out of my sport is the way to go about it. Because teams that use analytics,
it's definitely boring for television production and casuals.
Oh,
don't
yeah, no, I'm
care.
not saying
I'll say
that. I'm not saying from the entertainment
Exactly.
standpoint. I'm saying from,
yeah. I'm not talking about analysis.
Football
but
games, you got to use a little bit of both. Like Mike Tomlin does a great job.
You know what it is?
I think it's good for the big picture.
If you ever go to a blackjack table and you see somebody that hits 16, they hit it all the time. And if they don't hit 16, they never hit it. But the only time it's ever fun to do that is when the guy who doesn't do what he normally does something else. You know, he's like, I'm going to hit 16 this time. I just got a gut feeling. That gut feeling is usually gas, but when it's good, it's good.
John Miller, sell me on Mizzou real quick. I know you were trying to get in there.
Rocks.
Yeah, when I was holding up the 3 there, I was actually thinking there are 3 teams I think are just on the cusp there, including Missouri, I think Tennessee, Texas A&M. It's all about quarterback development there. If Nico Iamaleava can take the next step, Marcel Reed, Bo Prabula, we don't know what he looks like as a starter. Frankly, the fact that he's not super experienced tells me maybe it's the next season for Missouri, but who knows if he comes in and plays lights out. I think for those 3 teams in particular, if you see a real step at the quarterback position, any of them could be contenders for a playoff spot.
I don't necessarily see it with Marcel Reed. I think he's got a long way to go as a passer for this year. Nico, maybe not. And then, Bo Pribula, who knows?
I'm curious to see what he's going to look like.
They're called
Mizzou.
They're called Texas 8-4 for a reason.
Incoming guys, and I think I'm sold on Drink as an offensive play caller. I really do think that he has an understanding there. Got an influx of the edge for Mizzou, and I think they can make some noise. It's going to come down to a couple close games for them. If they can be this year's South Carolina, right on the cusp of that 12, I think, John, you're right. They have an outside shot. They would be that 4th team for me. I think Tennessee had an incredible front 7, just an incredible front 7. They're not going to have that same front 7 next year, and not the same.
Or
rushing
Dylan Sampson. Yeah.
And I will say for Tennessee, I really don't think it's as much as actually developing Nico as just getting him more comfortable running that offense. Because I think that the big thing every time you see a Josh Heupel QB enter the NFL, it's like, oh, well, like he needs a lot of work. But if you can master that offense, then you can be productive at least there. So I don't know if it's so much developing him, but I do think it's him learning the offense, which is always a thing that the first year starting in that offense, you're probably not going to be great unless you're like a Hendon Hooker, it was your 5th year in college. And so you were way more advanced than a redshirt freshman like Nico Iamaleava. But I think too many defenses are kind of catching on to Tennessee's whole shtick, and Josh Heupel doesn't adapt enough for it.
And that offense is so heavily based on get the ball out quick. You have to anticipate where these openings are going to be, and you're counting on your guys on the outside to win their one-on-one battles. And when they don't, you're screwed. And if you even hesitate, it's over.
Yep.
And if you don't have a run game to support it, or you don't have offensive linemen to protect for you, it's gonna be tough sledding for you. And that's Nico couldn't handle it. Hooker could because he was experienced and he had to do that stuff at Virginia Tech, and it was somewhat similar coming in, not exactly the same, but it was similar, and he could handle it. And he's a better leader than Nico is, so he could really command things. And that's why that he's been the only guy that's been successful under Josh Heupel is because of the leadership qualities more so than the actual talent.
Well, nothing could trump the experience of a Hooker. Go ahead, Stephen, as we wrap up.
There's a child nearby. How dare you?
Yeah.
There's a Hugh Freeze joke.
What's crazy is I don't even know whose kid that was.
Yeah. Due to helmet technology, offenses like Ole Miss and Tennessee's has been rendered less effective. Tempo has been such a weapon for them over the years, and now with the helmet technology being able to pipe in to exactly what's going on, there's an eye in the sky that can communicate really right up into the snap. So that's made it difficult. I'm anticipating Ole Miss slowing it down a little bit next year. And I think that Tennessee's going to try and find a way to do that as well. They leaned on Dylan Sampson this year, but I do think that it is trending towards slower football, closer to what Vandy's doing.
Yep.
I think that
Trendsetters.
I think one way the teams are going to address the tempo is like the mic cuts off at 15 seconds, is it? Mm-hmm. And so I think that they're essentially going to say, hey, we're going to run the play clock down a little more, but once we get set, we're going to shift once 15 seconds hits so that opposing defenses can't be communicated to of how to adjust. And so we're going to split that way, and we're still going to go up tempo and limit substitutions. But once 15 seconds hits and that headset cuts off, we're going to switch what our formation is, what we're doing, what anything is.
Let's leave it there, guys. We'll actually bring that up next week's show, because that is another fascinating topic about pace of play and all that, and we'll bring some analytics next week that'll make Steven angry. We'll get into that as well.
You guys get next week.
This edition of the SEC Squad. Follow and subscribe to your favorite SEC show. We'll be covering your favorite team every day throughout the offseason. And don't forget, I'll have you covered with the entire conference every day with Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Talk to you guys next week.